Let's go to Cincinnati, Ohio. We've got Les Thatcher on the line. Les, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, David. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good. Really good. Before we start discussing current wrestling scene, why don't you tell everyone about the Brian Pillman Memorial Show that you're involved in promoting?
All right. Yes, that's May the 25th, Thursday, Schmidt Field House on the Xavier campus. Actually, this year, Photos with the Stars starts at 4. That'll run till 6. Overlapping that just a little bit at 5:30, we're going to start the independent match because I think we have so many this year. We're running the indie showcase from 5:30 till 7. Introduction to the VIPs. Then probably get the ball rolling at 7:30 with the WCW, WWF, and ECW sending the match this year as well.
So who do you know who's wrestling, or do you have any matchups made or anything like that?
No matches made yet, but confirmed to come, Benoit, Malenko, Guerrero, Saturn, D'Lo Brown, Road Dogg, Al Snow, at least for one of the 2 days. You know, we're doing the Mark Curtis Fantasy Camp the day before on Wednesday.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, no? Okay, yeah. Well, we're gonna have the whole McGill on a press release next week. But yeah, we're doing the Fantasy Camp the day before for Pam.
So this is like a Thursday, Friday type deal?
Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I decided we thought we'd move the Pillman so it made get the Observer out easier on Wednesday, and then you could fly in on Thursday morning.
Well, gosh, Les, that was just really nice of you.
Now, lifetime subscription, David, don't forget. We've got, let me see, Dallas Page is confirmed, Terry Taylor's coming, Chris Candido. Heyman has promised me a match. We're not sure what yet. He said closer in, when he knew who he could spare, but he promised a good one. We've talked to Jerry Super Crazy, the Impact players defending their title or something along those lines. So I'll be happy to get whatever he wants to send me. But the fans that are coming in from out of state will have a whole afternoon of wrestling. So, like I say, and some good indie kids. We're going to bring some of the developmental guys from WWF and WCW. I'm going to have some of my best kids, a couple guys out of Malenko's camp. And when the lineup's complete, we'll have her out on a press release.
Okay, that's true.
Tickets went on sale today. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but yeah, tickets went on sale. Ticketmaster this morning. Okay,
great. Brian, anything you want to talk to Les about before we got to take a break?
We're actually pretty much up to the break, so I'll let you handle that.
Okay, well, you got to go now?
Yeah, I got to go.
Okay, Brian's wrestling tonight, so he's got to take off.
Oh, I read that. Brian, congratulations on your debut.
Thanks.
Debut? He's the tag team champion.
Oh, really? Well, I thought you were just starting to. Where did I read that?
Oh, Dave.
I didn't write it. I didn't write his debut. I congratulated him for winning the tag team.
Maybe that's what it was.
I said it was tag team.
It'll be my debut on this title defense.
Yeah, first title defense since he got his head shaved.
Right. Well, congratulations on shaving your head.
It's a vast improvement.
Okay, before you go, tell everyone about all the stuff up on the website and Figure 4. And
I also got to plug the Wrestling World magazine, which I just got yesterday, which has the greatest photos of Dave Meltzer that you will ever see, with the biggest mullet that you'll ever see, and it's on newsstands right now. And up on the website today, we have some new updates. We've got some new news stories up there. SmackDown report that a few of you have been commenting on. That's up there as well. Plus the new issues of Figure 4 and Observer. And all that stuff is up there at WrestlingObserver.com.
There's something. Is the Kane story up there, too?
Yes.
That's good.
For those of you in the Orlando area, there's there's going to be a luncheon that Kane will be attending, so you can check that out at the website.
Yeah. So tell everyone real quick the story about that thing.
I can't.
You can't? Well, then I will. Okay, I will. Brian wrote a story. It was a fictitious story about Kane speaking at a luncheon, and he put it up, and then the people who edit our website, they didn't want to put it on because I think it was like the time of the luncheon might have been over.
The deadline for reservations had passed.
He put reservation time for this luncheon where Kane was going to be speaking to some, like, what club was it?
It was like the Orca something. Country club.
Okay, some club, and they go, well...
King would not speak at the luncheon.
Yeah. So, anyway, that story. And we've got a lot of wrestling news to talk about, and we've got a full bank of calls, and we just got this in. I guess this ran on the AP this morning. I don't know if you've heard about this, Les, but I'll just read you the AP story. Republican Governor Christine Whitman and Assembly Democratic leader Joseph Doria have scheduled a news conference for Monday. Extreme wrestling events are low-budget and gory versions of professional wrestling. Performers often use razors to draw blood. Whitman spokesman Peter McDonough tells the Star-Ledger of Newark, which, by the way, wrote in the editorial about this, the primary goal is to regulate the audience and to ensure participants are safe. Doria tells the newspaper one of the bill's provisions would ban those under 16 from attending matches. So anyway, man, I just this kind of stuff just gets me really, really mad, and I'm not a big fan of some forms of things that they do in fact, the antics that was described in the newspaper article last Sunday that has led to this whole thing coming down the way it has. I mean, I don't really derive any enjoyment personally out of watching guys scrape their foreheads with cheese graters and that type of stuff. And if you want to even go so far as to regulate wrestling, and it's regulated statewide, where everyone has to adhere to whatever the same rules are, and they're legitimate rules, I don't really have a problem with that if they go, okay, you cannot use cheese graters, or you cannot use knives, or whatever it is, or mouse traps, or broken glass, or even fire in the production of a professional wrestling show. I don't have a problem with that. I have a major problem with a double standard to where something called extreme wrestling that does things which does that 90% of what it does are the same things that the World Wrestling Federation does, would be under different auspices, and the very few under 6, like to make a rule because 15 kids out of a crowd of 200 are under 16 at a Jersey All-Pro Wrestling show, just as an example, as opposed to 7,000 at the Meadowlands that are watching the same thing, and maybe worse in some cases. I just think that that's kind of ridiculous. And then, you've got, in fact, we may need to get Paul Heyman actually on the show this coming week. We always need to. We've always needed to, but it's like this is actually like a pretty important thing, especially if this is going down on Monday, because Extreme Wrestling, just based on the name of his company, is going to target him specifically, and I think it's really unfair. I mean, whatever rules anyone wants to apply to pro wrestling, as long as they are uniform and specified. You can't go in there and go, well, we don't want anything like this, and then they'll come unless you're a promoter. If they go in there and tell you can't do, and you run shows probably at high schools where that they would probably frown on swearing or something, or certainly they would.
In fact, a lot of the ADs and so forth that do business with us will express that, and say, please hold down any sexually suggestive, phrasings or gestures. And so in our valets, we have that. We don't cover them up in, burlap sacks, but, we have to be tasteful, or a little more so than, we'd allow otherwise.
The thing, and I wonder how this is affecting your stuff, but, I noticed it at an independent show I went to a couple of weeks ago at a high school, that even though the product presented was not really any different than it was, say, 3 or 4 months ago, because of the heavy influence of ECW and the chance of, we want puppies at WWF shows, that the crowd chants are more vulgar than say they were a year ago.
Yes, I agree.
So you've seen that on your shows then?
Yes. Oh yeah. And I try to I limit try to limit the guys to ass, hell, damn. We have children, and we try to build a family audience. But no, I know what you're saying exactly. Yes, a lot of times the fans are more vulgar than the wrestlers would be. And it's not it's not the older fans necessarily. Some of these are 11, 12-year-old kids.
Because they're influenced by what they see on television.
Absolutely.
And the newer fans are influenced. And, it's like fans learn from what they see on television. And as far as proper reaction from fans, one of the things, when you see someone on television get a giant pop, then when you see him live, you think you're supposed to pop gigantically for him because he's a star. And when you hear fans react and chant, "We want puppies," every time you see a woman, you think that it's the proper reaction because that's the reaction that's encouraged,
sure,
at least on TV. So at least
show us your, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's the ECW chant, right.
Right.
Which actually predated We Want Puppies by a long period, and probably We Want Puppies is a lot tamer.
You were talking about that jersey. But, I think I agree with you that, that there should be something standardized or, it should be the same across the board, a level playing field. But, on the other hand, this doesn't surprise me because these little outfits that do the hardcore almost exclusively, I can't talk exclusively, don't regulate themselves. I can get an example up here.
You're right.
A company lost about a year and a half, was thrown out of 2 buildings. Tried to start up a year later and lost the building they started in on the first night they started. But some of this silliness was, one of the things is that at one of the local junior high schools, a teacher took away a picture from a kid that was showing around. Well, the picture was of this kid who was, I think, 14 or 15, with a stripper who would be coming to these shows not as valets or referees or, but to sell Polaroid. And so where did you get this? Oh, I got it up at so-and-so's wrestling show. So then they had the city police in there. Look, So, let's face it, I'm a parent, a grandparent. Our 15-year-old kids, 14-year-old, sure, they're going to see it. But to sell them that sort of thing, it's just inviting trouble.
Well, no, a lot of these promoters that do some of this stuff do ask for it and probably beg for, there are promoters in this industry who beg for regulation.
Oh, absolutely.
Seriously. But whatever, and I'm not opposed to regulation, and I'm not really, I don't know if I'm in favor of it, because there are days that I think that it should be there because of these incidences that we talk about that are out of control, where people who aren't trained are doing really stupid things, and I think,
Absolutely.
And then there's other times where I just go, well, regulation's just a whole bunch of red tape, and what's the difference of pro wrestling in states that it's regulated and it's not? And there's no difference other than, taxes and hassles and things.
Well, I'll tell you an offshoot of this is over in Indiana, you can no longer run a wrestling show in a National Guard armory.
Oh, because of IWA?
Yes, yeah. Because of all the hardcore, all the blood and gore. So, in terms of that, it hurts us all. Because the National Guard armories are obviously the easiest place to get into, and easiest to do business were. And I wonder about the trickle-down effect there, where the Adjutant General in whatever state reads in their monthly newsletter or something that, the guy in Indiana did this. Well, maybe I better do it too, whether it's necessary or not. And it just makes it tougher to do business.
Do you, this is an interesting thing. Do you, as an independent promoter who, I know the basic type of wrestling that you want to promote, that you train your guys to do you feel like pressured now that to almost provide a product that you don't like at times because...
Yes, absolutely.
Because the audience is like forcing you?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. But, one thing that's refreshing up in WWF land, seem to be seeing a little longer matches that are being a little more, using a little more skill opposed to just the quick little 2-minute deals with a run in and no finish. And I applaud that for whatever reason. But I think at some point you have to give them the product that you're advertising. And I think that's, I continue to try to do that. It's like we don't do a hardcore match as such, but I'll take and tie a chair to a clothesline to one ring post and a big cookie sheet to another ring post, a garbage can to the third ring, et cetera, et cetera. Now the two wrestlers battle to get to these weapons. So there's a little, skill and competitiveness involved in getting the weapon before you're able to use it. So, but I mean, yeah, we don't do those every show.
Yeah, or every match.
No, absolutely. And we do get color occasionally, but it's for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not every match and not every show.
Well, so now here's one of the points right here in this thing that starts worrying me is because they're talking about performers using razors, okay? And it's like, okay, that's been part of wrestling since before you started in wrestling.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, probably going back to the 40s.
What do you mean before you started?
Well, I brought you on that you've been around for longer than anyone except for Dory Funk Jr. But no, the whole thing is like that's been around now. If they're gonna, and then there have been states that have banned the blade, okay, and again, if there's educated discussion and they make regulations of wrestling that sane people can live with, I don't really have a problem with it. But when you go, we're going to ban, okay, let's say performers, they're using this as like a scare tactic. The governor is using this thing. These guys are doing razor blades, blah, 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 but they're only going after like low-budget wrestling. Well, the fact is that, my God, we could see that, on most Mondays on Raw and every single WF pay-per-view, the same thing. So it's like, if it's that bad, then go after every, like I said, I just want consistency, and you never get it when you deal with Paul. That's one of the reasons why.
Well, this state in Ohio for years was unregulated. It was always just city license. Like if you wrestled, you had a license in Cincinnati, a license in Columbus, or a license even in a smaller city like Mansfield, but every city wasn't licensed either. But just over the last 3 years, there's a state commission. They don't really regulate. They just want you buy the license and you pay $50 per show for a permit. They never come to your shows. But the point was when we found out there was a commission, we asked for for the rule book and the application, the whole thing. So all they sent you was the boxing rule book, basically at that time, with boxing crossed out and wrestling written in. And it was ludicrous because they were saying each participant must have life insurance and health insurance, carried by the promoter on each participant. There must be an ambulance and crew, in attendance. And I told the guy, I said, listen, do you know what kind of budget these little shows run on? I said, you're talking about just for one night only, for me giving you more than my payroll is for 2 shows, just for just the adornment.
Well,
and of course, they took some of that stuff out, but the people running it had no clue what the hell they were running.
Yeah, that's where it starts to worry me. I have this feeling there's going to be some hastily drafted bill, and I don't know. But, there are states where it's actually illegal to do a fixed wrestling match. I don't know if you know that or not.
I don't doubt it, Dave.
It might be. I think Washington might be one of them, so Brian's in a lot of trouble.
He's a fugitive already as we speak.
That's right. They're gonna bust him tonight. Before we go to the break and start taking phone calls, I wanted to ask you your take on this week's situation in Atlanta.
The soap opera behind the scenes would draw more money than the one on the scene.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I heard you were, I guess, reading a fax or an email or something from one of your listeners about Bischoff's learned lesson. And that was my comment on my show Wednesday night, was that, if someone told me that on WCW Live he had mentioned that, he had been studying how Vince and WWF recovered in 97, and been sitting back taking all this in. Well, if indeed he's done that, and if he's profited from those mistakes, the guy has done some good things for this company, but in truth, because of an offshoot of how he did these things, that actually planned to seize for all this, disruption that's been going on down there over the last 6-7 months anyway. But if the guy, it's not to say he's not smart, it's to say if he's learned by his mistakes and comes in and does something, I say, maybe it's a good situation, at least short term. It just depends. But, here's the thing, David. You can put anybody in that seat you want. You can put anybody in the creative department, but if you don't have the talent to carry out what you're doing, and they're still 6 months to a year away, and I don't think that's what the people above them realize.
Well, the thing is like we've now seen Vince Russo and then Kevin Sullivan each get 2 months, and for better or for worse, and neither of them in their 2 months really showed anything that they were going to turn around. But at the same time, if they had done the right things, they wouldn't have shown those signs in the 2 months either.
No.
So if the idea that those people from above are going like, we need to turn this around, the realistic part of it is, if they really are building a turnaround, they're going to have to go down more, because they're going to have to remove the few people, the people that the few audience members left are still kind of into.
Right. I think
phase them down and wait for these, these other guys aren't going to draw 10,000 people in a month when you put them in the main event. And, you've got to build them to where they are, and it's not going to, that's probably months and months away.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, one thing is they've got to use Hogan, Flair, and Terry Funk to be, short term, if that's always going to be with the company, but use those guys to elevate the better mid-card guys like Kidman and Candido. I think Candido is in a position to really, show himself, if he can get his act together here, and obviously he's got the capabilities, I think. It's just, go ahead.
The thing with him is like, I feel, I thought Chris Candido had a really good debut on Monday.
Right.
And then I thought on Tuesday, even though, there was, the storyline made sense, I don't know, maybe it's just my upbringing, but I don't think that the second match on television in your territory, you should already beat a guy that you're planning on elevating. I mean, there's a time that you
I don't either. And the other thing I was going to say that has to change, I believe, and Kevin Sullivan's a personal friend. I have no vendetta, but just sitting on the outside watching is, I think, several of the angles or the deals are too retro. And, they need, I honestly, and with no meanness meant to anyone, I think if I'd have been making any changes down there, I would have tried the combination of Russo and Ferrara with Terry Taylor as the final word from the wrestling end to basically use the eraser and rewrite, in the wrestling vein like McMahon did in the North. And I think that, I'm not saying that's a proven horse or that's a guaranteed winner, but to me that's the one I think was more middle ground and built for long term.
Well, they may be doing that with Bischoff, being the eraser for Russo.
Right.
We're going to start with Tony in California. How you doing, Tony? Oh, Long Island. I'm sorry. Tony.
Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing really good.
Good. How you doing, Les? Good.
Good.
A couple things I wanted to touch on. I hear you talking about this issue with Christy Todd Whitman. And, I have heard you say in the past, you and Brian, conversation about, the Mick Foleys and that type of wrestler will probably spawn a whole generation of guys who are going to try to do insane stuff and kill themselves on the independent scene for next to nothing. So, in a way, this is probably a good thing to try to maybe help deter that from happening. Wouldn't you say? Because nobody's going to...
If it's done intelligently, I'm not against this. I just think that you need to be fair to everyone from top to bottom. And if you have things that you are not going to allow, they have to be specified so promoters know what they can't do. And then I think it has to be where, if the WWF can then go and do it, or if, it's like, I look at this bill, okay, and the thing that scares me is because it says it's a bill of extreme wrestling. So that means that Paul Heyman is going to be looked at with a microscope, and there are things, maybe, there are things that he did in the last pay-per-view, like the New Jack Vic Grimes thing, which was very poorly thought out and was a potential disaster anyway.
Right.
And if it wasn't there, it would be, I would think it would be better for all concerned. But I'm looking at that and I'm going like, you just can't do a bill and say like, okay, because no one under 16 can go to ECW, which I'm not even thinking is the worst idea in the world. But I'm just looking about fairness. If they can't go to ECW, why can they go to WWF, and why can WWF get away with whatever it wants? And these independents who are, most of your independent promoters that don't have, and that are not like Les, who, at least if nothing else, has a long background of a lot of different forms of wrestling. A lot of the independent promoters that are new, what they know about wrestling and what wrestling is based on what's on WWF television this week. So all they're doing is copying, and they're being come down on for doing what's basically copying, or at worst going a little bit further with more swearing, or a few things they may have seen on a Japanese video, or that their wrestlers have watched on a Japanese video.
Right.
But anyway, why don't you go ahead with your point? I'm sorry I bumped in.
No, I was just getting back to that. I understand where you're coming from, but I think that I think more wrestlers get injured now than ever in the past. It seems like the perception is there. And I think it might not be so bad that there's something, because all that's going to happen that I foresee happening is guys just pushing it to the limit and raising the bar more and more. And these in-ring tragedies, I think, I watched that New Jack Grimes thing, and you could just tell, even before they did it, when they were up there, that something wasn't right and they shouldn't have done it. And, it's only sooner or later where more and more guys are going to get more and more seriously injured. And these guys, some of these guys on the independents, and I know some guys that do it, some guys who just do anything to try to promote and advance their career. things that they shouldn't be doing. And, you know, you go to some of these independent shows and you see some of the stuff that's being done, and nobody's going to stop them. Maybe regulation might be something to stop them.
Can I interject something here?
Sure.
You know, I think, too, we're talking about a little different breed, and what I mean by that is a lot of these kids that are doing this at the independent level, I won't say they have no talent to do a standardized modern-day version style of wrestling, but I think on a lot of cases, a lot of them haven't even attempted that. They just think this is a shortcut to making them as some sort of star. And they think the more bizarre the deal, the more hair they have on their butt. And, where I think the guys up at the top, and I think if they were to speak out in both companies, have gotten to the point where they think the hardcore matches are pretty much slapstick. Think the nudist is wearing off anyway. But a lot of these kids think that, and the funny thing is I talk to, people that run the developmental departments at both the big companies on almost a weekly basis. And they'll be the first to tell you if that's what somebody sends to them, it goes in the garbage can for the most part anyway. They're interested to see if these guys have any foundation, not, how many tables they can go through or how many thumbtacks they can stick in their head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guys who are concentrating more on the wrestling and the foundation will have nothing to worry about. I think it's just the guys who are pushing it to the limit.
Right. Well, I think these guys think they have to prove more that way because they, like I say, maybe necessarily don't have the technical skills, but have never even tried. They think this is a shortcut.
Right. A couple other things, Dave, real quick. I heard something you said earlier in the week on listening to one of the archive shows, which hit home with something I have felt as well. You were talking about Flair at the pay-per-view, Flair wearing the T-shirt, and the same thing, I thought the same thing, and that touched on a couple of other things. Like a couple of these guys, and I'll give you two examples, when they had the Berlin character, and they were building him up to be this great heel, and the interviews were good, I thought, or were progressing, and then all of a sudden this guy has his first match, and he takes off his shirt, and he looks like he's about 160 pounds. And another guy is like a Tank Abbott when I see him. This guy should be wrestling with a tank top on, in my opinion. If I was running the company, I'd be making him wear a tank top or a cut-off shirt, because this guy's walking around with this disgusting gut, and it just makes it look terrible. And when you said about Flair, that's the way I felt watching it, too. When he came out there with that blue, I think it was a blue shirt, I said, you know what? Flair should be wearing a shirt all the time now, because he can still do all the things. He can still work pretty good. He still is great on the mic, but he just and that's why. I mean, I think it was Thunder this week. You kept seeing at the beginning of that show, and it was right there. Flair is flabby sign.
Oh, it's so sad. It's so sad when I see that, and knowing that from bell to bell, in some ways he may be the best guy in the company. And he certainly. When he's on, he is, as far as the ability to make someone else look good. I think he's still the best guy in the company.
You know what? You can fault him for whatever, and I agree with a lot. I think it's almost time. But I think the thing you got to admire is he goes out there and elevates everybody's game he steps in that ring with, and he busts his butt. And he's not afraid to sell. He'll put whoever over, and which is maybe his downfall.
Including Medusa.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, to me, it's disrespectful that Hogan won't sell for him more. I mean, it's a courtesy thing. But he goes out there and gives us all, and I appreciate that, rather than see some guy 10 years his junior go out there and walk through a match.
Like his tag team partner.
Yeah. Yes. Well, when they had that Hogan, Hennig, Flair Luger tag match, as that thing unfolded, a thought hit me. Kenny J was the third best worker in that ring.
Mickey J, yeah.
And that was kind of frightening.
But yeah. Dave, do you agree that somebody should be advising some of these guys maybe to dress differently, to maybe enhance their image and perception of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think your points were real good when it comes to, Alex Wright, when he came out there without a tan, it really hurt him. And, and it was too bad because he had such a good build-up. Abbott, the thing with Abbott, okay, is that the beer gut actually got him over in UFC. I don't know that it helps him in pro wrestling. And, the way, but it was a weird charisma he had in UFC,
right?
And that people.
Yeah, it was the contrarian. He was the contrarian opponent there because he wasn't the one who worked out.
He was against the grain.
Right, and it was like everyone's, like everyone wanted UFC to be their fantasy of a bunch of bar fights. But when the standard of fighting got good, the real athletes, took over. But Abbott was the one bar fighter who could, they marketed him and put him in matches, where against certain opponents and he was tough, and he's a tough guy. But
until this guy learns to work an interview, or at least do some body language and facial expressions, he can still go ahead and knock these people out in 1 minute. But until he learns those ingredients, I don't see him drawing with anybody, honestly.
I think he's dead personally.
Yeah.
I would have tried something with Abbott, but now I think he's dead in there, just like, spitting in the wind, trying to get him over, because whatever it is that he brought to the table is gone, because all he brought to the table was the fact that he was a real dangerous guy who's real. And now, everyone knows he's not real. And, it's like, and the other thing is it's like, Vince McMahon came in and, got to knock out Hunter and Shane, right?
Right.
Tank's doing it with Doug Dillinger, and that's why, the whole
and that whole thing with that, lumberjack deal. He does it, for no apparent reason. It leads to nothing, and then the interview was so horrible, bland, generic, that you couldn't derive anything from that either.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't know how to do a pro wrestling interview, which is funny because he was not a bad interview on UFC.
Don't you think maybe now he's trying? Before he's playing at it, right? I mean, a lot of times when I say that, I think a lot of times, great personalities in the locker room don't come across on. Out in front of the camera simply because they try to be somebody else. I think Alfred Hayes, to me, was always funny or twice as funny in the dressing room when he was wrestling than he ever was on, when he was doing Second Banana.
I always thought, like Ken Shamrock, because I know him a little bit and I've seen him in UFC, Ken Shamrock that you talked to and Ken Shamrock that was in UFC was 10 times the interview of Ken Shamrock in the WWF, because Ken Shamrock in the WWF was trying to be what someone envisioned Ken Shamrock should be, rather than be Ken Shamrock what he is, where they was comfortable at.
Exactly.
He was trying to be an actor,
yes.
And, acting wasn't his forte,
No. Well, Brad Armstrong has such a great dry wit. I mean, I've made trips, the guy keeps you in stitches on the road all night, but he doesn't come across that way on camera, because he tries not to be himself.
Yeah. Oh, the buzzkill thing was a bad one.
Bless his heart. It's a shame. Because he's one of the technically most sound performers in this business this moment.
Oh, yeah. But, I think the whole thing, I don't know, Les, like, you're around this because you're around a lot of young guys that want to be wrestlers, and some of them, I'm sure, come in with the idea of, hey, I'll fall on thumbtacks, put me in the ring. It's like, I'm trying to think. How do you save them from themselves?
Well, the only thing I tell is while they're in my camp or while they're working in our little promotion is that you play by our rules, and what I'm going to teach you is a foundation. The important thing to me, if you come out of my camp, is that you have a foundation that whatever you do from that point on, that you have an opportunity, or at least a potential opportunity, to be tried out in either WCW, WWF, or ECW. And again, that's what I was alluding to earlier, when we were talking about the extreme thing. Because a lot of these kids don't even want to try it. You notice so many of these guys are wearing the big hockey jersey and stuff, just we're talking about fat guts a little early, right? And, it's a shame, to me, the challenge is to see how high you can rise in this business, if that's what, if you're in the business at all. And to achieve that, you've got to put the whole package together. And some guys just think, well, this is the way, the shortcut. And, of course, it's not.
Listen, alluding to what Tony said, what would you think if there is going to be regulation on this business? Is there like a line, you've been around for a long time, and you know what guys can do with and without killing themselves on a nightly basis. Is there like a line? I don't know. What's the line? What's over the line? What's under the line?
Well, of course, a lot of that has to do with the skill level of the person pulling the deal.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, obviously, all this really.
Yeah, exactly. And, as good as Mick Foley was at it, he's 34 years old and virtually crippled, right? So bless his heart. I mean, he entertained me, but I didn't want him to pay that price. I'm adverse to the broken glass, and the fluorescent tubes, and, a little juice I'm not adverse. If the chairs are used in moderation. But the sad thing there is, you can bang some guy with a chair, on his head all night, and he may feel like nothing bad happened to me. But, over the long haul, it's got to do some damage. But that's, I think, again, it comes back to, at some degree, well, I think all you journalists wrote about the deal with New Jack at the last pay-per-view. No regulation, no thought, no planning it out. And somebody could have died in that thing. Now, but when is some kid going to try that, for God's sake? And I'm surprised. I told Mick, right after the Hell in the Cell thing, the first one, I said, the sad thing is, at some point down the road here, the next couple of years, you're going to hear some independent kid nobody's ever heard of doing it for $10 and just trying to, he thinks, make a name for himself, end up either paralyzed or dead.
Guaranteed. Yes. I'm expecting that one to happen, like weekly almost. I almost expect it now.
Sure.
Let's go to Matt in San Francisco. Matt, you're next up with Les Thatcher.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
All right, Matt. How about you?
All right. I got a question for you, Les.
Okay.
Okay. I think it was last year, towards the end of last year on Nitro, it was Page and Flair, and I heard after the match that there was some debate going on in the back about the way the match was called, where Page wanted to work all the spots in the back, and Flair wanted to do it in the ring. Okay, my question is, how do you train your boys?
To work it in the ring.
Work it in the ring?
Yes. Good. I don't, and the reason I say that, yes, and I know Dallas, but I've never sat down and gone over a match with him, but I understand he does a printout on his matches. I've seen sheets written out. A guy brought me a copy one from an indie show, which laid out an entire match. The problem with that is Matt, if you and I might burn the Cow Palace down tonight with a specific match, we might take that same match to Salt Lake City tomorrow night, and these people might sit on their hands. So we've got to be able to make adjustments on the fly. We can't call timeout, go back to the back, and work out another match. I was always taught you may put a few opening spots together, two guys that work together for a long time. A lot of times you don't talk over anything but the finish. You may lay out the last couple minutes of the match, and when a guy says, let's build it in the ring, I'm impressed. I think, and it's great to go along for the ride sometimes. If I've worked with guys who have enjoyed working with, and you'll trade off throughout the match. I'll call my offense, he'll call his offense, or vice versa. And I think the match flows better that way, because you can feel the crowd and what they're going with, and if they're not going, you can make the adjustments and go in another direction.
Yeah, it's good to see that you're bringing back more of the old school style. Next question. I'd like to rattle off some names, and I'd like to get your feelings on.
Okay.
Jimmy Cornette.
Jimmy Cornette. He's a good friend of mine. Sort of a volatile personality, but he's a good guy. Jimmy has got a very fertile mind for this business. And Jimmy says what's on his mind, and I respect him for that. And, of course, that's one of the reasons that we've both cost us both millions of dollars in the business for opening our mouths at the wrong time. No, seriously, Jimmy's a good man for the business. He respects it. And it's a shame, he's one of the great managers of all time that he's on the shelf and not working on, Monday nights. But it just, unless you got a 38D cup now, it doesn't work.
Jim Kentner.
What I was going to ask you, Les, what do you think as far as like the future of managers?
I think they'll evolve back, and they'll get some managers back in there. At some point, one of these little frail girls is going to actually get hurt, and then they're going to have to sit and think and say, well, maybe we're going to do some of these really goofy bumps. We'd better bring some guys back just who are built a little stronger. I cross my fingers every time Mae Young goes to the ring.
Oh yeah.
I'm seriously afraid that something bad is going to happen to that lady.
Let's see. He asked you about Jim Kettner. Let's talk about that.
What?
Do you know Jim Kettner?
I don't know him. I've talked to him on the phone. We've never met.
Okay.
What, did something happen, or?
No. He was just asking what your thought of him was.
Oh, Jim Kettner? It seems like a good promoter. The Super 8 tournament he does is, from all indications, two of my kids are up there this year. And I say two of mine, Chad Collier works with us and trains at our place. And, of course, Dean Malenko started. He and Shark Boy were up there. And they were super impressed the way the production was put together. And Jim's been doing it a long time, so I'd say, he's obviously successful, maybe one of the most successful indie promoters in North America.
Okay. How about Michael Modest?
I've heard about Michael Modest, but I don't know him. But the funny thing is, the kid here in Cincinnati who went to school out there, he was at Berkeley and trained with Modest. And he came over to my place, having some financial problems, and he'll probably come back and train later, but he worked out with us a couple times, and I was impressed the way he had been taught, because it was basically old school. And then I found out that Modest himself, you guys probably know, how old is he?
Mike Modest?
Yeah.
I'm guessing Mike Modest is about 27.
Yeah, but I guess he's been doing this since he was, 17, 18 years old?
Not that long.
Maybe about 20.
Yeah.
But he was trained real well by a guy named Ricky Thompson, who, wrestled. He was trained by Rick Thompson, and their schools are very fundamentally, the guys that come out of the school here in Hayward are usually pretty fundamentally sound.
Right.
And he's the head trainer.
Well, then, because I told this kid, I said, well, I'm impressed. You've been taught properly. And believe me, that's one in a billion sometimes. I mean, there's guys.
Oh, the schools, guys, yeah.
All righty. Roland Alexander.
Who?
Roland Alexander.
Roland Alexander.
Yeah, the guy who.
He's actually the promoter of All Pro Wrestling. Do you know him?
No, I don't know him.
Okay.
All righty. I got one more comment or question for you, Dave. What do you think of shooter Tony Jones working in Battle Art?
I hope he does real well.
It'll be good.
It'll be good. It'll be good experience for him.
April 15th, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just saw Tony Jones a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned that he was going there. It's good. It's real good for him to get out and work with new people, especially in Japan. I think it's gonna be real. I think it's the greatest thing for his career that's ever happened. Is just to go over there and work, and plus his style will fit well with what they do. So that's good.
He is a natural. That is down. Yeah. I've seen him wrestle pro and collegiate.
Did he really beat Steve Neal?
Yes.
Really? Because he told me that, and I was like, he told me that he'd beaten Steve Neal, and I actually have known him for a couple of years, and he just told it to me for the first time. It's in February, and I was just like, what, really? I mean, I knew he was a very good amateur at San Francisco State, but Steve Neal might win the gold medal this year.
One more. Les, give me your pick for the Super J.
The what?
Super J Cup.
Wow. I've never had a chance to see an entire tape of that. I've just seen outtakes. But it's obviously, it's a great tournament. I mean, there's a lot of top talent that's come out of that, or have been invited to it. I think it's, one of the most prestigious, especially for junior heavies or cruiserweights, whatever you want to call it, in the world.
One more name for you, Les. Chris Daniels.
Chris Daniels.
Do you know Chris Daniels? Chris Daniels is real good.
He was in the Super 8.
Yeah, he won it.
Yeah, right. Okay. Chad and Shark both told me they were impressed with him. I've never had a chance to see him work, but I guess this was his third year, and they said that he was the crowd favorite, and they were both thought he was a good worker.
Oh, he was the best on the indie team.
Yeah.
Now he's the best that WCW's got.
I hope WCW does something with. I really hope WCW does something with him. Because they got with him and Modest that are both coming in, or if Modest is. I mean, I know Modest is supposed to be on Nitro Monday, and if they give him a chance, I just hope that they don't okay, we've got two more indie guys, let's beat them. Right. I hope that they give these guys. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, even the other night, I saw. I don't know if you watched the show. I guess it would have been the Thunder on Wednesday, where Scotty Steiner wrestled Chuck Palumbo. And believe me, I'm not saying that Chuck Palumbo should have beat Scott Steiner. Far from that. But I just saw a guy who, he had good size. He seemed to have good athletic ability. He was not ready yet.
Right.
And I was just, just looking and go, you could do something with him. I hope they don't just establish him as a jobber to when he actually gets the rest of his game down, that he's been so typecast that no one will take him seriously as a star. I always fear that among the young guys, especially now with WCW, because they've done such a wonderful job of building up young guys in the last 5 years.
You know what they should do down there now, and I know Bischoff's seemingly, or from what I've heard, I don't know for a fact, that he dislikes tag team wrestling. But in all honesty, with the young guys needing the rub and needing to be built, the old formula of never mind that it's one of the top guys, but take a veteran mid-card guy teaming with one of the younger guys, then he can teach him a lot and cover the younger guy's mistakes until he learns.
It's an idea. In Mexico they do this every year, and they have done it in Japan in the past. Is to do a tournament, like a television tournament, where you have an established star teaming up with a guy who's not. So every team would have be like a Hulk Hogan with a lower guy, Ric Flair with a lower guy. And what will happen is the lower guy, just by being a tag team with Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan, as the tournament progresses, they're going to start being taken a little more seriously.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Well, I think when they bounced Vampiro up a couple of times in the tags or with the top echelon of guys, would have been better if he'd got his hand raised.
I think that might happen Monday since he's working with Flair. So that'll be the one. It'll never be with Luger, right? Whenever he's with Luger, it's like, well, Luger's not going to elevate him, but maybe Flair will.
I don't know. You'd think that Luger, of all people, okay, would respect the business and whatnot during the thing with Brody, in the 80s. You think that would have steered him straight. He would be, up to put anybody over. Whatever's good for business. And, you were talking earlier about Flair. I have to agree with you. That's great for business. And even in the WWF, The Rock is even doing it. A couple weeks ago with the Dudley Boys, he put them over.
Dudley Boys, he put the Big Boss Man over on TV not that long ago.
That was one of the things that was drummed into my head, gentlemen, when I was taught this business was if you're any good at all, you can look at the lights and still, come out of it strong.
Sure. One thing that I don't understand, okay, and this is just a question of fairness, is that if anyone is, and then Luger, this is the thing with Luger, is that if guys continually put you over to make you a star, wouldn't you, just accept the fact that since they're doing that for you, you probably should do it for somebody else at some point?
Yeah, that would be your normal thought patterns, wouldn't it? Yeah, I feel, I'll tell you the truth, years ago, when you go into a territory and they would build you up, you'd start with the jobbers and then you'd, work your way from the opening match on the house show, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of times, the guys underneath who got, of course, I'd been one of those guys too. That's the way we all started back then, unless you were, some humongous, outstanding athlete with a name already, or a big guy with a humongous amount of potential. But, I always felt it was part of the deal was to get some of their stuff in before you took over. Because, and again, I think today in WCW, there's a place for some squashes just to get some guys elevated that can't go the long haul yet, that are still trying to learn the business. But, everything wasn't always a squash. And in a house match, if you're working with a guy basically doing jobs, you're going maybe 8-10 minutes. So you get him some stuff in. He looks good, and you've beaten somebody. And I think that's the key, too. If it's whether the people know it's entertainment or not, I think if you can make it seem competitive, you can draw them in, and I think that's what your job is today.
Okay, anything else, Matt?
Les, do you have TV?
Beg pardon?
The Heartland? Do you guys have
no,
TV?
we don't. Not at this time, Matt.
Are you pretty close to getting?
Gosh,
something going? Because I'd like to see some.
I don't. Right now we're not. But with these the fantasy camp and the filming, and we're looking for a new and bigger location, which I think we have found this week. With everything else going on, right now I hope we don't get TV. No, down the road I'd like to do something like that. Yes, we do practice interviews in house.
Okay. Plug time for you. Where can I find tapes of the Heartland?
Where can you find what? I'm sorry.
Tapes of
videos.
Oh,
videos?
Videos of your show.
I'll tell you what. You put your email address at hwaonline.com, and we will put you on our newsletter email newsletter mailing list, which comes out once a month. One of the guys in our organization is starting to edit some of the shows over the last couple of years and is going to do a highlight show or a best of sort of thing to kick the ball off. And, of course, that'll be announced there or on our website. So drop your email off there and we'll put you on the list.
Okay.
Or anybody out there, check us out and we'll be happy to put you on our email newsletter list.
All righty. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Wes.
All right. Thank you.
Take it easy, guys.
Okay, you're very welcome. That's, what's your, do you have any direct or indirect affiliation right now as far as WWF and WCW goes?
David, you've been crawling.
I mean, I know you're indirect, but,
Well, actually, yes, and I mean, I've signed one end of a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they sign it, yes, I do.
Which
WCW.
one? Oh, so really? Okay.
Yeah, 2-year deal. It just goes into effect next month.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Oh, I was
So-
tested because they hadn't broke it yet, but, yes, I signed it 2 days ago, and we've been talking about this. I've talked with both companies, and the deal with WWF was very generous, but the deal with WCW afforded a little more for the company for us to grow a little bit. And, honestly, Dave, I look forward to the challenge of, trying to not only send some of my kids out down there, but I'm going to be working with some of the power plant kids, basically, as Terry says, the graduate course. So they've kind of, it's a good challenge for me, and I hope I can live up to it and, do a good job for them.
So the idea would be that they would, if they have guys, that they would send some guys up to you and you'd put them in the ring as well up there?
Right, yeah, we put them in shows. We've cranked up a little bit. In fact, starting in April, we're going to be running 6 shows every month. And then, plus, I put the kids out in front of the crowd, but then part of my job is taking the rough edges off back in the gym, the little critiquing little things that the average person's not going to see, the body language, the way they stand, the way they throw a punch, or the way they carry themselves, to refine those things just to make it a better product.
What's funny is that that's actually the stuff that's the difference between an indie guy and a major leaguer to me. It's like I sometimes you can't even put into words, but you can see it, and it's like the way you stand and the way you go into your lockup. I mean, it's like you know how to do it, or you're a guy who's mechanically trying to do it.
Right.
It's like real little things, but yet, and I think you can see it just in the execution of the spot.
Absolutely, they should a good worker is crisp. The spots are tight. Now this thing with 3 count and the other guys, Hayashi and the other 2 kids. I think I should be an elephant and some peanuts in a calliope someplace. There's no psychology to it.
The only thing I can say for them is that at least they're really working their ass off to entertain.
Oh, I agree with that.
But I know what you're saying too is that they're out there, trying to do a spectacular move after spectacular move.
Right. With no direction for it or no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
And that's, and I think that's a lot of the kids. Again, I mentioned this about the hardcore kids, but the kids that are willing to do technical stuff, willing to take the time to learn it, I think they try to find shortcuts too, and they see the spots. But again, the talent scouts in all the companies are looking for people that are technically sound, first, last, and foremost. And I think a lot of, it's amazing to me, a lot of kids don't want to hear that. Because it does, we were talking about the hardcore thing. I think this blends in as well. 2 guys can go out there without the weapon. I mean, you can get rough, you can get blood if that's the case. There's no reason not to have a fence match or a strap match or whatever occasionally. But the point is, I think you can pull the people in and do your job if indeed you look right, the package is right, you're technically sound, your body language, facial expressions, your mechanics. But, of course, to develop to that degree takes time and commitment, and so many of these kids don't have it.
I think there's another point, too, as where it hurts WCW, and at times it's also even hurt WWF, and some, I think that there also has to be a context of what your product is. When you're trying to do a million things with your product,
right?
Sometimes I think that, when you try to get serious in a product with too much clowning, then you almost look like you're out of place.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I absolutely do. Yes, I think, people perceive us as a show, obviously, and some people think we're funny to begin with. So the last thing we need to do is over-accentuate that. We need to try to, again, like the magician, pull off the illusion that we're actually mad at each other, we're actually competing, we're actually hurt. And I still think if it's theater, that's even more important than if it were real. So, because, let's face it, UFC is not the most entertaining at times of, combat sports.
SmackDown did a 4.8 rating, which is the exact same rating it did last week. So that's cool. This is from JP in San Francisco. For Les, I was at a show in Peel's Palace in Erlanger, Kentucky a few years ago near the end of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. New Jack and D'Lo were the only guys from Smoky Mountain that were there. After the card was over, there was a brawl in the parking lot between New Jack and some of the indie guys. It seemed legit. I remember that. That was legit. Since some of the punches thrown were 5 feet away and looked like they connected. I was wondering if you could provide any information on this incident, since I've been curious about it for years.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, some of the kids that trained with me were there that night. That talked into actually working that show, and they weren't ready. It was just some guy, trying to get his foot in the door. But yeah, Jimmy, what had happened there is the people that own deals wanted to change the structure of the deal that Smokey had with them. So Jimmy didn't wilt under the pressure, so pulled out the show a week out. And as it were, we were down, Al Snow and I were down doing TV. And actually we're on the way back when all this was transpiring. We were driving up the road and didn't have any idea. But yes, that was true. D'Lo and New Jack went over there, and I think New Jack had been partying down a little bit and started to get involved. It was actually just to work initially. And then one thing led to another, and the kid that was one of the security guys was an aspiring young gentleman that wanted to be a wrestler too. So I think maybe that, he got a little overzealous. Anyway, yes, it did spill out the parking lot, and the police were called, and yeah, it was legit.
This is real quick. Cause people actually ask about this one. How's Rory Fox doing?
Doing real well. Putting on a little size now, and his work's improving, and he's got a fan club, and the little paperboy gimmick that he doesn't like is getting him over. Everybody seems to to really get off on it. So I think Rory will be all right. I think he puts on a little size and gets a little more mature. He'll make a good cruiser for somebody.
This is actually about the Extreme Wrestling bill. They go, do you think that low-budget, gory promotions can get away with doing the exact same stuff but just simply build themselves a sports entertainment? What's weird about the semantics? Because I've always thought, when UFC was having all of its problems, I've actually told it to some people here who wanted to promote UFC, in fact, including Frank Shamrock, and I go, why don't you just call it pro wrestling? You won't get any hassles from any athletic commission, and then just present your product. And it's like, oh, but people will do this. And I go, well, why not after you do all this and everyone says this, why don't you just have all the guys go to the commission and go, our match was fake? I don't know.
Well, you're right. I don't know either.
I don't know. It's like, I just see pro wrestling can do anything it wants, and so you just do it. I don't know. This is another question for you about someone who I'm sure you fondly remember, because you probably wrestled him a million times. Rip Hawk. He goes, what ever happened to Rip Hawk?
I think Rip is retired and down in, I think New Mexico. Lives in New Mexico. I'm not sure what he's doing. I know he was at a reunion of a lot of the Mid-Atlantic guys in Charleston, and Harry Marcus's birthday party or anniversary party. Mike Mooneyham can probably tell you where to find Rip exactly, but I remember Rip was up for that. Guy I have wrestled probably 100 times, maybe 200, 300. But yeah, he was a real good heel. He was one of the people that helped Bill Flair's foundation when he came into Charlotte.
Well, that was actually the example of what you were talking about. Ric Flair was a hot-shot young wrestler, and Rip Hawk was an established veteran, and the first big programs that Ric Flair had was Ric Flair and Rip Hawk tag team.
Exactly.
And the guy says that he remembers Rip Hawk as being brilliant at working a crowd.
Yes, he certainly was. Had a good head on his shoulders.
Okay, let's go to Western Virginia. Wes, you're up with Les.
Hi, guys. How's it going tonight?
All right. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Les, I saw the feature on MSNBC a couple weeks back, and it focused on 2 trainees that you had, and they made a big deal about the way they eat, to put on size and all, and I see somebody like Shark Boy who's got a lot of talent, but his physique's kind of out of place in WCW. How important is that when you bring in training?
I think it's really important, and that's something Shark and I have talked about, and he has finally gotten settled in back here, and this week started training with another one of my kids, Ray Steele. A good friend of mine named Mike has a gym up in Middletown, Ohio, Power Station Gym, and it's a tremendous facility, and he works with some of my kids, they go up there to train, and they've got Shark Boy, and that's the big thing I told him. I think size is main flaw. And, another good solid 20 pounds of muscle, not that that's going to lock him in for life, but, it just gives him a better shooting chance of getting back, in getting a contract with somebody. And I think, bless his heart, Jimmy Hart likes the gimmick and is giving him a little shove, and I think Dean can, live up to the expectations. It's just, I think it's the illusion. This business is an illusion, and I think people are accustomed to seeing racy, tight physiques, and, that's what they want.
Okay, anything else, Wes?
Yeah, I just want to get Les's opinion on the power plant at WCW. They turn out a lot of guys with good physiques, but none of them really have any talent. And with the amount of money that that company has, they should be doing a better job developing new people. I was wondering what his thought.
Well, I think that's one of the things where we come in. They were turning out some good athletes, but they didn't have any place to practice their trade, and see if it actually worked in front of fans. You can learn all the basic moves in the gym and run through all the drills, but to practice the psychology and actually be able to put something together, you got to do it in front of a crowd. So Terry Taylor is working his butt off down there trying to build a scouting system and, put together a developmental program, which they actually didn't have up until this whole thing sprouted. They just had the power plant. But a lot of those kids were trained in there, but except for getting squashed on one of the TV shows, actually didn't go out and work maybe for 2 or 3 months at a time. So without practical application, great instruction and being a great athlete, it really, it's a good foundation. It doesn't get you there.
Thanks a lot for the comments, Les.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wes. Let's go to Sean in Las Vegas, and let's try to run through this as quick as we can. Okay, Sean?
Yeah, I know you guys want to get through this quick, so I'm going to say, Les, I'm 18 years old, and I live out in Vegas, and as soon as this semester gets over with college, I'm going to be moving out to Cincinnati. And
Could I ask you to speak up? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying that I live out in Vegas. I'm 18. As soon as this semester of college is over, I'm going to be moving out to Cincinnati and starting in your camp. I have a question about the wrestling business. It goes along with the last caller's comment. Do you think the wrestling business has enough confidence in it that bigger guys can actually sell to the smaller guys without hurting the larger guys' credibility?
I think it's easier today than it was 20 years ago. David had mentioned earlier, that I promote still some old style. I'm always under the impression, if there's 100 pounds difference, that it's not a contest. And I think it comes back to the ability of the wrestlers. Has a lot that plays a big part in it. But I think if you're trying to create the illusion, to me, I never saw the value in Mysterio and Nash or Mysterio and Sid.
No.
I mean,
Bigelow, yeah.
I never thought it did anything to elevate anybody. But I can see the David and Goliath thing working occasionally. I've worked it myself. I mean, I was never a big guy at 5'9" and 220. Where you're just salty and you keep fighting back, and no matter how much they beat you down, and it works once in a while, but you can't do it all the time. I think with Kidman, and I love Billy's work, and I've watched him grow. Here's a kid who, if he's going to work with the bigger guys, it takes away from his style, which I don't like, but B, he needs to put on a little meat too, because I think, you can't put him and Scott Steiner together and make me believe it. I'm sorry.
My example would be Chris Candido. He comes in, and they immediately throw him in the cruiserweight division, which isn't necessarily bad, but the fact is, will he ever get out of it, which I think he can perform in the heavyweight division. I don't know if he will ever get out of it.
Well, Chris, I think this is the first thing I saw, and after his debut Monday night, if I were the booker, it's Kidman and Candido, Tammy and Torrey.
Yep.
And besides that, Chris can work Billy's style. And, probably two of the best workers in that company right this minute.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, Sean, let's go to Ryan in Phoenix.
Hey, Dave. How you guys doing today?
Good. How about yourself, Ryan?
Pretty good. Something that I've been watching, and it gets worse and worse with WCW, their security. It's like if somebody does a run-in, their security's there before even someone else could even come out of the locker room,
That whole security thing, well, the way they do it, they have a farcical look to it.
Yeah, it's horrible. And you don't see that in the WWF. I mean, you never have, really. It's like they don't want other people to do any run-ins, but yet they're doing the run-ins, and then the security's coming anyway. And it just makes it look worse.
See, there you go. You're looking for logic. How dare you?
Another thing I noticed was like Tank Abbott starting off the show the other night. I mean, that's horrible. You guys were talking about him earlier, and I get that. But, you know, and then I turn on SmackDown last night, and, you know, at the same time, same thing, Monday and Thursday, you're going to see it. The biggest people start the show and end the show. Yet, I mean, they don't get that. I mean, and it seems like was even like that when Bischoff was there towards the end of his tenure.
I think there's several formulas in this business that don't need to be tampered with. You can change, you know, because it's 2000 versus 1950 or 1975, you can change the dressing, the shape of it. But the foundation and, you know, of these things, I think, you know, are important. And I think, you know, that's what you're talking about there is I was always taught you put it, whether it's a house show or a TV show, you open with a bang and close with a bang.
Yeah, because
you know, if you're going to lay any eggs, lay them in the middle where it's, you've kind of lulled the people into a false sense of security by that time.
Yeah, because you got to reel them in to keep them there.
Sure.
And if you don't reel them in, they'll turn, you know, if it's a TV show, you know, they're going to turn the channel. I mean,
Absolutely.
if it's a house show, they're going to stay regardless, but still you want them involved. And, you know, if that doesn't happen, that's when you start getting the boring chance, you know, 20 minutes into it. Because they just aren't fired up.
Well, you know, I think one thing, too, is the fans have educated us opposed to the vice versa, and I was always taught we educate them. And, you know, you may lose a little business, but if you really wanted to settle things down, it would happen. You would convert them, you know, to what because they want to see wrestling. And I think, you know, WWF's put a little more actual technique, a little longer matches, and I applaud them for that because, again, that's what brought us to the dance.
Yeah, that's one thing I really miss. I mean, I miss those 1 hour wars that, you know, that Flair used to have in NWA in the tiny little studio in Atlanta. I mean,
I'd settle for 20 minutes.
I use a lot of those old tapes. We were doing it the other night over to Jim, and play them for my kids. Just, you know, I'll tell them we're not going to see any hurricanranas here or, you know, moonsaults, but what you're going to see is facial expressions and body language, timing. You know, not 50 punches, but one punch that means something because it's thrown properly and at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, if you have two workers working that are fantastic, I mean, the old matches with Flair, the old, even Four Horsemen in the little studio in Atlanta, they were phenomenal.
I think in Kansas City, Benoit and Hart proved that if you make it, you know, I mean, you take two good workers as the first ingredient, but then if the cast and crew of the rest of the show makes it meaningful.
That's the key.
Yes, it works.
Yeah, and that was you know, great best match probably of the year that I can think of for pure, you know, match style was that the match with Benoit and Hart in Kansas City. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, it was. You give me Flair and Terry Funk 20 years ago, and they don't have to throw a punch and they'll burn the house down.
Well, hey, I see you're up against the wall, so I will let you go, and have a great weekend, guys. Take care.
Okay, Ryan, thanks very much. Can we get Steve in Montreal in before the break? Okay, Steve, you're up in Montreal. We've got like a minute to go, so just ask quick questions.
Oh, gee, well, I was going to ask you about, I was going to ask Les about his opinion about Brian Pillman and whether his character would still, you know, work today.
Oh, God, that's the character be perfect today.
Oh, yeah, he was yes.
He was ahead of his time.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. It's just so unfortunate that his passing was like right before they went to that direction.
Well, he was kind of opening the door there, right? Remember, he took Terry Reynolds hostage, and
he was the one.
Exactly.
He changed the business.
Pulled the gun on Steve Austin.
Definitely. By the way, Jim Ross in his Ross report mentioned that he was going to try and get there for the memorial show. He said he mentioned it, and he said he was going to try and get down there. So.
Yeah, well, in fact, I've been playing phone tag with him. We talked about it last year. He said he'd try and come in for the fantasy camp and the Pillman. I hope he can make it for both. Jim would be a welcome. Yeah, I told him, in fact, come in and you can help me MC the daggone thing. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, then I know you're right at the wall there, so anyway, take care, guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Steve. And Les, I want to thank you very much for doing the show. And
Dave, it's always a pleasure. Enjoying kicking things around with you. I tell you what, now I'm going to say this in front of the whole world, so you can't back out. Your press pass and your credentials are set.
You know what I would like to do, and I'm sure we could arrange it, is to do the show from there.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll work on that one, but
yeah, we can.
You mean Al will work on it, right?
Actually, that's a great idea, and Dave, I'll talk with you about it next week, and we'll try and set something up. Les, how's that sound?
Very good.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll just do the show from there, and you'll have all the guys there. It'll work out great. I mean, and they want me to do more location stuff anyway. So yeah, I'd love to do it.
Very good. Let's work on it then.
Okay, great. Okay, Les, and we'll be talking to you real soon, and good luck with that show, and keep us up to date, and we'll keep updating everyone about who's going to be there, matches when they're made, and everything like that, and try to do this show from your show.
All right, very good, David. You keep up the good work, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Les.
Take care.
All right, that was Les Thatcher, and we're pretty much out of time. I just want to remind everyone, next week's guest, Monday, we've got Bret Hart, and he's very anxious to do the show, so that's going to be pretty interesting right there. We have got Wednesday, we're going to have Larry Matisic from St. Louis. Thursday is Jim Cornette, and Friday, Chris Cruz. We were supposed to have him on a couple of weeks ago, and he's written some interesting letters, and he's going to be on the Court TV special. He has very strong opinions, and you guys can talk about that, and we'll be back on Monday, 6 p.m. with Brian.